Hi team, Andy here from Lions. Welcome to the fourth episode of the Lions Den podcast. We're very lucky to have England Sevens speedster Tom Bowen with us on the pod today. So first things first, Tom, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Yeah, really good. It's a very strange time, obviously, at the moment, but with all things being how they are, I'm all right, yeah.
Nice. It's strange. So I think I posted earlier on Facebook or Twitter or one of those about you're saying the speedster Tom Bowen's coming, and it must have been a sign. When I stepped out of my flat, there was a Porsche speedster that I've never seen one before, and it was parked out right in front of the road.
Oh, so there you go. It's very fitting.
There we go. So what does this, you say, we've been like, obviously it's an uncertain time, especially with sports like rugby, with what's going on in the media and what people are talking about. But what does it look like at the moment for you guys, keeping fit and active and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I'm using it personally just to get my body right, really. Not as young as I used to be. There's certain things going on in my body now that I'll be able to sort of shake off, but now I've got to sort of manage. And I'm really enjoying just sort of not being sore every single day, which is quite nice for a stranger. So I haven't kind of had for the last sort of 10 years. So a period of 2 months of just being sort of, my body's feeling quite nice, which is good. Yeah, sure.
What are those things that you're doing to try and look after the body?
So sort of all maintenance sort of stuff in like gym wise. So a lot of range of movements, a lot of high load sort of lunging, squatting, making sure everything's still functional and working, but not pushing it to its max. And then sort of longer runs, so aerobic capacity runs, sort of steady state. So you keep your heart rate at a certain level for about an hour. Increase speed, so your body doesn't get not used to running fast, basically. So we do like tempo runs, which is about like 16 to 18 second hundreds, and sort of keep yourself at that sort of still ticking over.
That's great. Just think about 16 to 18 second hundreds. That's probably my flat out now.
Yeah.
Crazy to think about that. We've been speaking to a few other guys on the pod. Just spoke to James Lang on the first week and Hugh Tizard, both at Quins, and obviously I suppose their training is different to yours, and it'd be cool to get into the ins and outs of how they differ. But the key thing they're doing at the moment is like broken Broncos. So I'm sure you'll be familiar with the Bronco.
Oh, see, I've never actually done a Broncos test. We do a similar. So we do the 1200. It's fairly similar to a Bronco, like probably I think it's pretty much the same distance. And then, 12 laps of the pitch and then we're done, which is pretty nasty, but it's quick and it's done. And then we do not the bleep test, the yo-yo test, which is, their rank. You think you're doing all right, and then you fall off a cliff. So yeah, they're always good fun.
It'd be cool to get. So what those guys did is told us their Bronco time. So I think the maximal aerobic, the 1200 meters, pretty much the same. You've just got less turns. You guys do 12 turns, whereas in the Bronco it's like 30. So what's your
my best 1200 is, I think it's 4 minutes 19. I'm naturally I'm not an aerobic athlete, so like running for a long time is not my bag. I'm all about the short stuff. And then my yo-yo is 19.5, I think. Level 19.5. So I think our fastest 1200, Charlton Kerr, he did a 350. And they sort of hit that regularly, that 350, 355. They're really good. And then we got like a 21 or a 22 on the yo-yo a few years back. Can't remember who. I think Christian Lewis Pratt a few years ago did like a high 21 or a 22.
So that gives some benchmarks to some there that are trying to, aspiring to be professional rugby players, professional sports stars. Something to look at. Some massive times there. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, so some boys are really, really pretty good. I'm turning for my last turn on the 1200 and they're crossing the line at the other end. So it's can be a little bit demoralising sometimes.
You say there though that yours is the shorter stuff, the sprints. What do you get tested on? What are the measures that you need to go for?
the 30 meter through the gate. So they time us at the 10 meters, 20 meters, and 30 meters. I think I normally, my range I normally win at is the 10 meters because I'm quite short, so I can get out pretty quickly, and I normally hit like 1.06, not 1.06, 1.60. That 1.06 is a bit quick.
It's quick.
yeah. So that's the one I normally that's what I pride on. As long as I can get out quick, I'm normally all right. And then we do like sort of max velocity. So we wear our GPS vests, and I think I've clocked out at 38 kilometers an hour. I've hit that once or twice, and I hit sort of high 36s, low 37s regularly. Which I'm clocking that, and I'm still getting rounded by some blokes. So you imagine the speeds they're sort of hitting.
Yeah, imagine. Who is how does that fit with top 5 within the 7 squad?
So I always put myself as I would say I'm pretty quick, but then there's a little bit above me. So there's people like John Conroy, Carlin Perry, Norts, and they're sort of the next level up who can hit that 38 sort of regularly, that pull away and get there like pretty much every single time, and that's pretty hard to stop.
And what about in the sevens camp, in the England sevens camp?
Top 3 at the moment. I think Big Mike Ellery, one of our props, is one of the quickest blokes once he gets going. He takes a while to get going,
nice.
But once he gets going, he can hit a 38 in there on a good day. And there's obviously Norts. There's a guy called Ben Harris, who's another big fellow who get hits at sort of 36, 37s if he's lucky. So there's a few of us that can all hit that speed.
Yeah.
And then I think I was looking at the other day, like they were showing like average paces or high paces in the Premiership, which is like 33 kilometers an hour, 34. And I think our slowest player is like a regular 34 hitter.
Oh, that's crazy. And you mentioned North there, so for everyone out who hasn't watched the sevens, who might know, it's Dan Norton.
Yeah, Dan Norton, yeah.
Okay, cool. And one of the things when I looked up on your on the England site, I was trying to work out how many times or how many caps you got for England, but all they've got next to you is a 0.
Oh no! So I'm on 49 caps, wow. Which is quite interesting, and we don't know when the next tournament is at the moment, really. So don't know whether we'll be hitting 50 at some point soon. So I'm on the 49 caps, and I think it's 95 tries. So hopefully I might be able to get, if people are nice and generous, give me some nice walk-ins.
Yeah.
In my 50th tournament, I might be able to get 100 tries at the same time.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it'd be always nice.
What's the message coming out? Because I haven't seen much with the sevens circuit, and I imagine there's so many more moving parts to that than a campaign that's in a specific country, for example, the Premiership. And I know they're talking about going back to play behind closed doors and those kind of things. What's coming out from camp in terms of?
Not a lot. The fact that we play in a World Series, we have teams from every single continent coming to one place, 15 to 20 people in each squad, staying in the same hotel, eating in the same place, traveling to the same venues, and then going back to their own countries. So logistically, like a bit of a nightmare. So the reality of it, I don't know when it will be back. We do have a European tournaments, and maybe we do that first, something like that. But the logistics of trying to get 16 teams from around the world in one place with support staff is very tough. So it's probably very similar to like the F1, as in teams from all over the world coming to one place. But the reality is F1 has a lot of money, and they probably fly privately and stay in these nice big private hotels and stuff like that. Sevens doesn't. So it'd be interesting to see where they go with it, to be honest.
It's so hard at the moment, isn't it? Because I've spoken to a lot of the different players within, so I think at Harlequins, I spoke to Henry Paul 2 weeks ago as well, who plays over at Bedford. And obviously the difference between the Premiership and the Championship is vast as well. But how are you guys set up in terms of working at the moment? Have you been furloughed, or are you still working?
So we are furloughed, but it's in your own interest to keep a certain level of fitness and keep yourself going. Yeah. But the reality is we're not providing a service, we're not training, we're not doing anything. So there's no point keeping us on full time. So we're going to be furloughed. It's stupid not to. One of those emails you get sent out, You don't have to participate in this training schedule, but this is if you want to do it, which always helps. And being giving a schedule and stuff like that is helps massively to follow rather than trying to make it up yourself.
So is that what you're having to do a bit more at the moment, or are they allowed to give you training programs?
We do have training programs and stuff like that, but I think we've been given the flexibility to do it sort of when we like, as long as you don't overload too much. And it's like guidelines. You can play around with it. Things work for you. Change it up a bit if you get a bit bored. Yeah.
Cool. Coming back to the, before all this stuff happened with all the lockdown and what the tournament sort of structure looks like, how is that compared? Because I know you've played at championship level. How does that compare to motivation-wise and all those different kind of things, having to travel around the place, travel around the world, all those different pressures?
It's definitely a far more competitive environment than the championship. I know I could rock up to a game and not really watch my opposition too much in the championship and scan up when I get the ball. Okay, there's the guy's a bit out of shape. There's the slow guy. I'm going to run at them and try and break through there. Rather, when you play sevens, I have to. All right, what's this guy's actual weakness? Okay, he's quick, but maybe he's not very good at stopping. So I'll stop and go him. He doesn't like tackling on his left shoulder, so all I'm going to do is try and jam in onto his left shoulder. Sevens is far more finer margins because you may only get 1 or 2 opportunities in a game, or 0 opportunities, depends how it goes. So you need to make sure when you get those opportunities, you know what you're doing. So that's the main difference. And you have to play 6 games in a weekend. So that's the really tough one. More like physically, it's tough, but emotionally. So you lose a quarterfinal. And it can be on a bounce of a ball, a ref's decision, and you can be like, everyone's lost a game and been absolutely devastated, and then you have to go play it again in 2 hours. It's a great benefit that you get to play again straight away, but then trying to get all that negativity, maybe it was your fault. You lost the game for your team, and then you've got to go and play again knowing that you've just lost the game. So you have to try and develop the skills of being able to park those things and then go again.
What do you do in that scenario when that happens? How do you personally cope with that?
We've had a lot of psychological help. We have Katie Warriner, a sports psychologist, who comes in and helps us. And we talk about people who are red-minded and blue-minded. So people who are red get quite fired up and quite angry, and blue stay relatively calm, but maybe repress those thoughts, like keep them inside rather than getting them out. So I'm quite a blue character, so I keep quite calm, but I find I have to vent a little bit, have a little bit of a moan, otherwise it will stay with me for longer. Have a little bit of a moan to my mate next door, send a few texts to family if they're watching, or my girlfriend, but I have a right moan about something, and they're right, sweet, got it out of my system, another opportunity, let's go, have some fun. And then if it's still with me, then you have to sort of deal with it. You have to think about it. Why am I feeling like this? Oh, that's why I'm feeling like this, because I'm disappointed. Okay, how can I learn from this? And that's the main way I look at every sort of decision I've made. Right, how can I learn? Why did that affect me that way? Why did it affect me this way? Okay, it won't affect me this way now because I've learned from it. So everything's it's a constant do, learn, and then repeat sort of thing.
And how does that differ, just for other people out there who might feel like, I know myself, I'm probably more of a red character in that way. So what from your teammates have you seen, the people that are those red characters, how do they cope, or how does it differ?
So probably a bit different for you. So we call it like priming yourself. So the refs may not give her the right call that you think, all right, that's a turnover. And they say, no, hands on the floor, whatever. And you go, oh, I disagree with that. But so you get angry. But if you think before the game, all right, a ref may give a wrong decision, but okay, I'm prepared for that. I'm prepared. That goes into your mind, look, I'm prepared. And that happens in a game. Yeah. Right, you may get angry, but I'm prepared for it. I thought about it already. I thought about the decisions I'm going to do. Right, sweet, get back 10, done. You have to sort of prime yourself. You can't just, go into a game thinking it's going to happen, right? Because it won't. You will react. Fight or flight? You will either go straight into that rather than going, all right, this is what I've learned. This is what I've planned for. This is how I'm going to react to this situation, rather than just reacting.
Yeah, that's a great point, because it's like you said, it's taken every opportunity that happens, whether it's a success or a failure. And, how can we learn from it? I think it's really relevant, as like last week, is Mental Health Awareness Week as well. So I think it's really good to be able to share those points with people out there, and how to deal with referees, because even more so at junior level, you must remember.
Oh yeah, for sure.
With referees that are just dads and mums.
I remember there was one, we were playing a game. We're defending on their line, and he's one of their players. I think we were like 13, 14. He's kicked it, and one of their players was so slow to get back onside. He's caught it on the halfway line, so he's like miles offside, and the ref didn't realise, and he's just turned around and scored. And we were like, he was offside. No, he's like, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. You're like, and then you go, all right, get on with it. He's human as well. He's made a mistake. We all make mistakes.
Well, some great advice out there for any young player, I think. That's cool. So which club was that with?
So I'm from Brighton, so down south, but I played in a club called Lewis. One of those clubs that I would still go back to, and like still know a load of the people behind the bar, and still have chats. And I remember when you were running around here when you were 6 years old, kind of thing. I'm like, oh, sure. Yeah,
it's nice when it happens, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
That homely feel when you get to a rugby club that you've played at for years. Is that where you started your rugby as well?
Yeah, I started there when I was, I think, 5 or 6. My dad took me down there, and because my dad's Welsh, so he's obviously mad keen on rugby, and he took me down there because he used to play there. So as soon as I was ready to sort of big enough to catch a ball, I was down there running around. Yeah, it's great fun.
Nice. And how did you get then from Lewis to England 7? What was the journey like?
A bizarre journey, to be honest. So I played like a lot of club rugby, school rugby. I remember playing like twice a week through the winter, quite constantly. Sort of, I've always been a state school. I tried to go to, when I was 16, tried to go to Brighton College. I didn't get the grades. I think I got all B's in my GCSEs, and they didn't accept me. And I was genuinely really happy I didn't go, because it would have been probably a financial burden for my parents to I would have got a scholarship, but still it's a lot of money to go. I was through like the Queen's Academy, sort of all the EPDG stuff, and then I think I got released from there when I was 17 or 18, and I was playing out at Sussex Downs College. It was one of those, I think I was the only non-private school kid in my age group at the Quins at the time, which was quite interesting. So they didn't come and watch me very often. Then from there I played England colleges.
Okay, yeah, England colleges, because I got confused with this, because on the England website it says England students.
No, so I played England colleges, and I played England under-18s clubs and schools.
Right, okay.
So played for like south of England, and then you get into England clubs and schools, played Ireland, and we drew 24 all over there when I was 18. Then I played England colleges, and we went and played over in Portugal, which is great fun. I can't highly recommend England colleges enough, because it's all sort of state school boys. Obviously probably not the same standard as a lot of the private schools, but a lot of, I don't know, different crowd, more my sort of crowd that I was sort of brought up with.
I'm not actually sure if they're still running, unfortunately, because I think they've pulled that. They've also pulled England counties, and I think England students as well. So
yeah.
Well, it's a shame. Money, which is a massive shame, because you think if you've come through there and now you're representing, England Sevens, it's.
Well, yeah, exactly, because the head coach, not even the head coach, one of the coaches at England colleges was can't remember what it was called, but it was a tens tournament, and they needed a winger. Yeah. So he's gone, yeah, come along, and I've no contracts to any clubs at the point, not really sure where rugby was going. Go along, play in that, play really well, get like player of the tournament, and a load of the people who were playing in it, I was playing with, they're all like these random blokes there for, I wouldn't say there for the rugby so much, where I was there for the rugby. I learned a few things on that trip, which was great fun. But we were actually representing the Hambo Foundation. Yeah. So we're raising money for that, which was obviously a good cause. And a lot of those people I was playing with were Leicester Tigers, like community coaches who go around coaching in schools. And they said, look, we know the Tigers academy manager, we'll give him your number and let him give you a ring. He gave me a ring, said if I wanted to come up for a week's trial. Went up for a week, stayed for a year. So signed there for a year in their academy, which is probably the most professional academy I can imagine. Sort of 35 boys between the ages of 16 and 19, training full time, developed myself as, I think I put on like 5 or 6 kilos whilst being there, and then sort of developed my rugby. But then it came to contract time. They said, look, you're too small. If you were 4 inches taller and 10 kilos heavier, we'll sign you. Like, well, I'm not. So what can I do with that? And I was like, all right. Managed to get a gig down at Plymouth for a year's contract. And I think I played 24 games in my first year. Second top try scorer as an 18, 19-year-old. Then my second year, I was top try scorer with another, I think it was like 16, 17 tries in 24 games. Great experience in Plymouth. Hard rugby, sort of young guy learning my first sort of experience of men's rugby, and in championship you definitely as a few old boys there know a few tricks, but great experience. And then I got picked up from there and played sevens for the last 6 years.
Wow. Yeah,
quite a journey. Definitely not the normal way in.
No, and that's why I've wanted to do this podcast, really. It's just about helping people, help parents, for one, but also, most importantly, help young players that are trying to get into professional sport, whether that's professional rugby or anything else, and just show specifically in rugby, it's a late maturation sport, and there's lots of other ways in. So speaking to Hugh Tizard last week, and I think it was like 10% of the 18, or I think when he was 16 to 18, that similar age group over in Leicester got actually a professional contract. But then you've got if you downsize it from the 120 that came at the beginning, it's such a small fraction, and there's such a small margins to whether people come and go, and whether you're liked, disliked, and whatever the reasons, which I'm sure people have lots of different.
Like, I think at Leicester when I was there, they had a load of wingers. So I was like, all right, they don't need me. That's the sort of thing. They're like, all right, it doesn't matter how good you are. If they're full up. Like, you're not required. Yeah.
And did you find that many of those players that didn't make it dropped out of the sport as well?
A few did, but a few are still playing, like knocking around, playing part-time, or like teaching, or went to uni.
Yeah.
And sort of go through that route, which is quite interesting, because I was always given the idea, if I went to uni, that would have been my end of sort of the idea of playing professional rugby. All the blokes who I play sevens with now have all went to uni and come through that way.
Yeah. No, it's cool, because that was exactly what happened with Henry Pauls now over at Bedford. He got picked up it was through the England counties, but it was through university first and then elsewhere. And then James Lang was also through university and just came later. So it's, there's lots of other routes. What about people who've helped you get to where you are? So who are the influential people in your life that allowed you to reach the heights that you've reached?
My dad, obviously, he never pushed me. So he always let me sort of find my own way, but he always gave me the time. So when I was over a kid, he would go around the field, kicking the rugby ball, passing, running, doing all those sort of things. Rather than pushing me to get better, he just gave me the time. And that sort of let me develop in my own way. When my team, when I was a kid, we needed a new rugby coach, he came in. He would say he wasn't the best coach, but he put in the effort and gave people the time. And then we ended up being a half-decent team. And then sort of through my professional career, no one, especially growing up, I never had like one coach that I felt, oh, you've changed the way I play rugby. I always just got the ball and ran. Like, I never really thought too much. And I think that's probably when I played my best, is when I just get the ball and run. But then when I came into sevens, I had to sort of find, because I was always competing with Dan Norton, obviously one of the best players of all time to play sevens. So I was like, all right, I need to find something else. Sort of develop my game so I'm another option than him. So a guy called Tony Rokes, he's a defensive coach. He's now with USA, actually. And they, funnily enough, nearly won the World Series last year, and they had a really good defence. He sort of changed the way I sort of approached the game and how tackling could be my thing. So that's sort of where I changed my game from a guy who's like, all right, he can beat everyone and be a world beater, like with feet and being fast. All right, I need to change my game to fit the team, and how can I best put myself in the team? Tony Rokes probably had the biggest sort of change in how I play, and then obviously Simon Amor, he's never made me feel comfortable, if you know what I mean. I've always felt like I've got something to prove. Testament to him, the fact that I feel I've still got something to prove to him, where I'm never feel like I've done enough.
Side, I suppose, of the thing that keeps you going and drives you, I imagine.
Yeah. Have I impressed him? I don't know. Like, all right, I've still got to keep working. Yeah.
What coming back to the changing yourself to become a better tackler? What did you specifically do to better tackle, or were you already there?
It wasn't so much tech. It was a bit of technique. So I always talk about I'm good when I dictate to the attacker. So I give myself space so I can accelerate, and they have no other option than being tackled. So it was always about seeing the picture and knowing what my reaction is to that. So if it's a guy coming, this is all quite technical actually. So if a guy's going really quite upright and slow, if I try and go fast and in at his ankles, he's going to just push me away. I can't do anything about that. So I've got to go slow. So then I'll meet him on my terms, and then I can sort of control him, and that gives you time. But if he's running fast, I've got to give myself space, because if I get too close, he can just step me and go where he wants. So I've got to give myself space and time. So when he does go, I can react and accelerate into the tackle. So that's the sort of the two basic ones.
Yeah. And how much of that do you cover in the training sessions that you do with the team, or is this stuff that you then have to go off your own back and go, no, I want to become better at this, I've got to put the effort in outside of training as well?
So we have 10 to 15 minutes after each session normally to work on those sort of things. It's often not very popular to ask someone, oh, can I tackle you? Which is always quite interesting. But we're competing against some of the best steppers' feet in the world. So you're going to get better. And if you don't, you probably won't stick around. If you get it, we'll have sessions where I feel like, well, I've had quite a lot of it here. I don't need to practice this today. And then you go, all right, this week I feel like I haven't done enough of this. All right, keep practicing. So it's always just sort of picking and choosing. All right, you become good at it. Don't ignore it. Keep doing it, because that's why you've been good at it, kind of thing.
Yeah. That's one of those hard questions, isn't it? It's whether, what do you work on? Do you work on some of your weaknesses, or do you get your strengths to where, improve your strengths so they're better than everybody else's strengths? And what part of that would you agree with, or what's your view on
that? You've always got to pick up your weaknesses. Say you can't pass off your left hand. That's an easy fix. Yeah. Practice. It just takes time. I remember when I first came into the 7 setup, anything over 10 to 15 meters, so every other pass in 7s, I really struggled off my left hand. I couldn't fizz it, especially if I was running fast or I was square on. So I practiced loads, and funny enough, I can do it now. But then you have to think, why am I here? Why have I been picked? Why am I good at this game? Oh, because I'm good at this. Or I can still get better. I can still work on quicker feet. I can work on acceleration. I can do those things that make me how desirable. So you can't lose. You need to keep those things up. You can't let yourself sort of drop to normal levels. You're feeling like, I haven't been practicing. You got to keep yourself topped up and bring everything up to that level.
And what about if you had any, what are the skills you think that, say there's a player that's listening to this now and, they're thinking, wow, that sounds cool to be a professional 7s player. What would you say the skills needed are? So being able to pass off left and right hand over, how far did you say, 10 to 15 meters?
10 to 15. We try not, the wider the pass is, sometimes it's easier for the defense because you can just shift because the ball's in the air for a long time. But it's more like the accuracy of the pass. So if you're running and a ball is behind you and checks you, so you have to catch it, that means the defense can come across and defend you. So when passing basically on the money, that's the one sort of an attacker can catch it and react and do things with it rather than having to stop for the pass. But to be a good 7s player, it's what are you good at? Are you good at tackling and being on the ball? Right, do that. Are you good at running with the ball and beating defenders? Yeah. Right, do that. If you're fast, run around people. It's basically sevens is do what you're good at and don't try and do too much of the stuff you're not good at. We have players who know who, if they're on the end, their one job is to run really, really hard into the opposition or into a hole and offload. So that's what they do. My job is slightly different. If I'm on the end, if there's a gap, I'll go for it. But if there isn't a gap, I'll run myself out, look for someone else. But then at the same time, I'm not going to be standing at first receiver calling little plays and saying, oh, you come around there, you do this, you do that, because that's not my job. That's someone else's job. So I think that's the main thing with sevens. It's a very basic and quite a simple sport. Do what you're really good at, and then you should be okay.
Yeah.
And work really hard. Then. Yeah.
We've got a good segue to get into, the work hard. We touched on it briefly, but what does work hard mean in sevens versus 15s?
I always sort of put it down to working hard is quite. You work smart, so work when you have to, work early, and then you probably don't have to work as hard. If you can cover a gap before it becomes a gap, then you don't have to chase that person 70 meters as they've gone through it and back to your post underneath your sticks, because that's even harder. You've had to sprint and chase him and they've scored a try. So why don't you just work that little bit of the 5 meters before and then you don't have to? So it's identifying when you need to work hard and when you don't. So some people go flying around making loads of tackles and then they blow up, or they've overworked and leave a massive hole of where they come from. So it's knowing when to work. Obviously, it's going to be hard because you've got a lot of ground to cover. But then if you don't have to, because you've scanned the picture and you've seen what's going on, you go, right, I can chill, I can take my time, I can get myself into the right position. So it's always going to be hard work, but it's being smart.
Can't imagine there's much place to hide on a sevens pitch.
No, there isn't. There's definitely not. But all right, if there is anywhere, it's on the ends. If you miss a tackle, they've scored. Yeah. So you can chill a little bit more on the ends. You don't have to do so much work in the middle. But then it's your job to control the guys in the middle by telling them what to do. Right, don't work so hard. Make sure you push across, stuff like that. But then if you miss a tackle on the end, they've kind of scored. So
yeah. Okay, cool. Just obviously we spoke about it a little bit with staying motivated and but how how many years have you been with
6 years?
6 years. And how would you say you compared, or are you still as motivated as you were in the first year, or are you more motivated? How do you keep that motivation going?
My motivation is very different now to when it was. So the first 2 years, it was to sort of get better and trying to learn and pick my chances. If I get a good chance, all right, take it. But now it's, why am I not playing? Put me on. I've earned, I should be playing. Why am I not playing? And then to prove sort of I want to be the best, but I don't want to be the guy that sits on the bench and comes on. All right, we've won a game, you go on. We've lost a game, you go on. All right, no, I want to be competing. When you have high levels of competition in training and people that want to push you, motivation doesn't sort of dwindle. It sort of stays there, because if I'm not pushing myself, the bloke next to me is going to be going, what are you doing? Why are you not? Why? I can see you're not pushing yourself. You're going to be called out for it. So I think that's one thing maybe I didn't sort of realize. So coming into this last 2 months, motivation, I'm gym session. I've got no boys shouting and hollering and load of banging music out and having great energy with the boys, having fun. And then I'm in my back garden with a bunch of bands, sort of sitting around, pulling them and doing lunges on my own. So that's definitely the energy from the group. Definitely gives you motivation.
Yeah, I haven't got a meter stick, I suppose, a measuring stick on what it's like in the 15-a-side game. But it seems like most teams, they get pretty tight. But I imagine a sevens team's even tighter than that.
So there's probably about 12 or 13 of us that have been knocking around for the last sort of 6 years, 5 to 6 years. And we're really tight. We're good mates. And some of the people are best men at other people's weddings and stuff like that. We travel around, we live in hotels with each other for 3 weeks. We know each other in and out, and it's a bit of a family vibe. People will fall out with each other, but there's no, I wouldn't say there's cliques. Where if you have a group in a Premiership club, 40 people aren't all going to get on. Like you can't have that. But where we're so tight and there's not many of us, it does become that sort of family vibe, and we do spend so much time together.
Yeah. Well, it sounds nice. Apart from the hard work you got to do and have some of those times on the 1200 meter, I'm in. Last question from me before we get on to some questions that people have sent in is, knowing what you know now, what's the one bit of advice you'd go back and tell the young, aspiring rugby player you once were?
Yeah, I'd probably say, because I never thought I'd be a professional rugby player. You know, when kids sort of say they dream, like, oh, I want to be a professional rugby player, I want to be a professional rugby player. That's what I dream for. I never thought that was a reality. I thought I didn't know what I thought. I just thought I'd just tick along. I think that's one of the reasons why I sort of became one. So not if I was like, don't put pressure on it. Don't squeeze it until you squeeze it so much it's not there anymore. So that's I think that's one of the reasons why I sort of am where I am now, that I never put too much pressure on becoming a rugby player. I just really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed playing well, I enjoyed competing. And I think that's why I've sort of been relatively successful.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I think it's the most important part, and the most important part I think that I want to tap into is that enjoyment. It's making sure as soon as you, it's every week, to be fair, it comes up with the same thing, is if you're not enjoying it, and I know that there's some players that do see it as a job, but if you're not, and I get everyone probably sees it as a job, but if you're not then enjoying that job, it's like anything, what you're then looking for, what's next, or you can't enjoy yourself. So I think that's a massive...
I think that's a lot of... Because if you put so much pressure on it as a sort of a young person, even like a young adult, sort of 15, 16, you think, I need to compete, I need to be the best, I need to do this, I need to be winning, and you don't, you're not going to enjoy it. So... then, right, if you keep being like that, if you're not going to enjoy it, you're not going to get the best out of yourself. That's the reality of it, really.
No, very good point. Great point. Okay, cool. Thanks, Tom. I think we've been through everything here. It's always really interesting for me to find out a bit more, because I know you've come and done some coaching with us before, which we've been very grateful for. But actually to hear your stories and where you've come from and how it's develops, it's inspirational for me, and I'm hoping then for parents and young children out there as well. It's also inspirational for them as well. But before we leave, we've got some questions I've got to ask, and the first one comes from Albion Quinn, or Ponsonby 42 on Twitter, and it says, do you miss club rugby, and who from the club days are you still in touch with? So I think it's from someone from
yeah, he's an old Plymouth fan. Yeah, I definitely miss club rugby, as in you have a game each week, which is great. You lose a game, and then you get to play again the next week, the week after that. And it's like a constant. It's good fun. But then the same time, it can be a bit monotonous. Like if you're not enjoying it, or you're not playing well or something like that, it can be a bit dull, and the training can be a bit dull sometimes. Yeah, I definitely miss the sort of the routine of it. Each week's relatively similar, and you sort of develop that way. But definitely prefer the Sevens lifestyle at the moment of getting to travel and sort of that kind of thing.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. It's interesting that you said earlier about the if you lose in a semi-final or a quarter final, and then you get to go and rectify it. Then how do you then? Just one thing I thought then. How do you then cope if you lose in a final and then you don't play for?
Yeah, that's really tough. So it can like fuel the fire. One time we came back, and then we did like we lost one of our last games. Didn't think we did very well, and we had like 2 weeks before Christmas. And I remember we came in and we did like a training camp with the women at the time. This was like 4 or 5 years ago, for them to sort of see how we worked, see how they worked, and it was fine how that worked. But I think we'd lost our last game, and I was like firing, coming straight into training 2 weeks before Christmas, get a really good block in, and it wasn't what I wanted. And I remember being like, this is what I'm really highly motivated from the loss, and I'm not getting that. So that's sort of where okay, you may have lost the game, but then it gives you extra motivation to get better, kind of thing. So that's what I would use that as that sort of the motivation, turn that around and use it in a different manner.
No, that's good. Yeah, fuel the fire. Best way to learn. And then one here from Richard de Carpentier. Who is your favourite golf partner?
Favourite golf partner? It's got to be Richard himself. He's the original. He lent me my first set of golf clubs, so I can't thank him enough for the addiction now.
So have you been enjoying since they've lifted being able to go?
Yeah, for sure. I'm making the most of it. Yeah,
it's another sport. I've got literally no thoracic mobility, so the lifting, trying to swing a golf club, it just could be going anywhere. So,
I've been playing for the last 2 years, and I've still no idea where it goes. So.
I once played around the golf, I came back, I was so knackered, and I can't remember exactly the amount of shots, but I basically said to someone, he said, "How many shots did you do it in?" And it was like a massive number. He goes, "Yeah, it's because you've just played like 3 rounds of golf in one." Oh, right, that's probably why then. Brutal. Next one from Rory McConaughey. What tires you out more, a game of sevens or listening to Noughts? So we said already Dan Norton's chat.
I mean, sevens is tiring, but if you've ever spent a bus journey with Dan Norton, you would understand that is one of the most fatiguing processes you can go through. He does, we call him sort of TK Maxx, because he talks a lot of rubbish. You might get a little bit of gold out of him occasionally, but mostly it's rubbish. So it's pretty exhausting sometimes, especially when you're a little bit jet lagged or sometimes a little bit hungover. I've been known to snap at him a few times.
Oh, really? What's the kind of, more of a wind up, or is he just talking?
He's a bit of a wind up, but it's more the sort of how constant it is. Right. It's just like if you've ever hear him do an interview, there's so many words to describe the smallest thing, and he's definitely exhausting sometimes.
There's that point. Yeah. Nice. And then the last one is, what's the best and worst thing about being a international sevens player? That's from Joe.
Best and worst thing. So the best thing, so the travel is obviously great. We get to go to these amazing places. I've flown down the Grand Canyon. I've been up Table Mountain. I've played in front of sort of 75,000 people. Those things are amazing. But then being able to play with people you really sort of care about in our team and being able to perform on a stage and perform well and enjoy performing with each other, I think that's probably the thing I enjoy most. And then the worst thing is probably jet lag. Being in close proximity with people when they try and wind you up sometimes, and being in jet lag and feeling pretty tough, pretty miserable sometimes, or coming home and not being able to sleep and stuff like that. That's pretty rough. But yeah, as things go, if jet lag's the worst thing going, that's not too bad. A lot of people say probably like the hard work and the running, but you actually get quite a lot of enjoyment out of that, I find. I'd rather play a final than go out and start doing like before a yo-yo test. I get so nervous before that. I get more nervous doing that than I do playing a game.
And just to finish, you said that like some of the things there about playing in front of like massive crowds, some of the places in the world that you've played. If there was one moment in your professional rugby career that stands out the most, what would that be?
There's been some great wins. We won Vancouver. I think we beat New Zealand, Fiji, and South Africa all in one day to win Vancouver, which is pretty class. Some good nights out as well, which have been quite memorable. Probably there was one game in my first year I played. I think Dan Norton wasn't there, so I was the first choice winger. And we played in Las Vegas for the first time. And we were playing South Africa that were playing really, really well. And there was one game where we scored like a worldie of a try that I was involved in. And Sanatla, the winger, was on fire at the time. And I remember tackling like tackling him into touch twice, turning him over once, and then like I was like, oh, I'm good enough. I'm good enough to play at this level. And that was my first sort of real moment of sort of clarity of like, all right, I feel like I've sort of arrived.
And then I imagine after that being in Las Vegas, the party is pretty good afterwards, right?
No, it was a real quiet one, that one.
I imagine. All right, well, thanks very much. Thanks, Tom, for coming on. And I'm sure lots of parents and or any listeners, I suppose, have got some good fun, some great insight into being a professional sevens player. So thanks very much. Hopefully at some point in the future, we maybe can catch up again and see how things are going. Next week, we've got Anna Capliss, or Anna Capliss, you tell me off for saying it that way, from Harlequins and Ireland. So if you've got any questions for us to ask Anna for next week, make sure you send them over. If not, we look forward to you tuning in next week.